friends, welcome back to our channel. So in today's session we'll discuss about the common constraints which we are being used in the SQL while creating the table. So constraints, our topic is constraints. So what are these constraints, right? So generally these constraints are given for the attributes while creating a table, right? So constraints are nothing but some rules. While creating a table we have to give some rules for the attributes, okay, while inserting the data, while accepting the data. So what are those constraints? The common constraints. So let us discuss about the primary key. What is a primary key? Not null, check, default, unique, foreign key. So these are the common constraints we are going to use while creating a table. So previously we have seen the command for creating a table and we have seen the command for inserting the values into a table, but there we have not given any constraint for the attributes. But here we can give the constraint. So let me explain you about the theoretical part. That means what is this constraint? If you give this constraint for the attribute, what happens? I'll explain here, and after this we'll move on to the SQL command line and I will execute each and every constraint. Okay, I will demonstrate each and every constraint by writing the query. That means we'll create a table with each and every constraint. I will explain everything. Okay, so first one is a primary key. If we have given an primary key attribute, I mean any attribute as a primary key, it will be having the two characteristics. One is by default not null. That means the user should not leave it as a blank. So while inserting the data, if the user left the blank, that means if user doesn't give any value for that particular attribute, so by default the attribute value will be null. So there is one more constraint, not null. If you give this not null, it should not be accepted. Okay, it should not be left blank. So compulsory the value should be given by the user while inserting the data. So here if you give the constraint as a primary key for any attribute, so by default the not null will be applied, and also no duplicates. So duplicates were also not allowed. Okay, if it is a primary key, if any attribute is given as a primary key, duplicate should not be allowed. So let me explain here. So create table student. Okay, so we can give a multiple line. We can write the query in a multiple line unless you give the semicolon, because the semicolon is the termination of the query. So here I'll write some SID, some integer, comma, some sname, some varchar, which is of a character data type of some 30, okay, and a branch of a varchar of 20, percentage as a float, and here you need to write the primary key. That means a constraint. After declaring all the attributes, then we can write the constraint a primary key. So which one we want to give, which attribute we need to give the primary key in a parenthesis. So SID. So this will create a table student with the four attributes SID, name, branch and percentage, and this SID will be treated as a primary key which should not be kept null and which should not accept the duplicates. So I'll execute this query and I will show you. Okay, so after creating a table, I will execute that one, and also I will try to insert the values with the duplicates as well as with the null values. I will show everything. Okay, all the cases we'll see. So this is how we can give the constraint primary key. And coming to the not null, so if you specify any attribute with a not null constraint, that implies so it should not be kept blank. So while inserting the data, we have to give a value for that particular attribute. And while creating a table here, so for which attribute we want to give a not null, that should be given after declaring the variable. So here SID integer, sname varchar, branch varchar, percentage float. Here I'll give a not null. Here I'll give a not null. So if I give a not null, that implies this not null constraint is given for the percentage. So percentage should not be kept blank for all the students, any student. Okay, we have to give a value for the percentage for the student. It should not be null. It should not be, the default value is not null. Okay, we have to pass the value. We have to pass the value. We have to give the value. We have to insert the value. Right? So that is the not null constraint. And check. The name itself indicates check means before taking the data from the insert command, before inserting the data from the insert command, it will check the condition which we are giving, and if the condition is true, then only it will be accepted. The data will be accepted into the table. For example, let us take one more attribute, that is the age which is of integer. Okay, after that we need to write the conditions. So constraint, sorry, not condition, constraints. So I will write the constraint a primary key which is of a SID, and then we can use a check constraint, check age greater than 18. So if I execute this one, so it will create a table with attributes student ID, student name, branch, percentage, age. All the 5 attributes will be created. Okay, and in that the primary key is set for the SID, and not null is set for the percentage, and check age greater than 18. So while inserting the data, if you give the value for the age which is less than 18, it will not be accepted. Okay, while inserting the data, so we have to insert the age value which is a greater than 18, then only it will be accepted, and that data only will be inserted into the table. If the age is less than 18, the data will not be inserted into the table. That means before insertion it will check this condition. Okay, so this is also will execute the query, and I will explain everything. So that is a check. And the next one is a default. So we can set the default value. Okay, we can set the default value. So let us take I will remove the branch. Okay, I will take the college varchar of 20, and here I can set the default college. Okay, so here only we can write a default quotations. Let us write some college name here. Right, while declaring the attribute itself, we can write the default value. So default value will be this one, and unless, I mean, if you are not giving any value for the college, by default it will be taken as a BEC. If you are giving any value for the college, that value will be taken as a consideration. That will be, I mean, this BEC will be replaced with the given value. Okay, while insertion we have to pass all the values, or we can give required values. Okay, if you want to insert a required values, required attribute values for the required attributes, so we need to specify the attribute names. In such case, if you are not giving any value for the college, by default it will be considered as its default value. Okay, whatever the value we are giving as a default, that will be taken. Right, so if you give any value for the college, this default value will be replaced with the given value. Right, so I will explain you, I will demonstrate by executing the query. Right, and the next one is unique, which is similar to our primary key. So the same thing. Okay, but the only difference is it can accept the null value, but it doesn't accept the duplicates. But it can accept the null value. Right, for example, we have seen the unique as a contact. Okay, or an email. So it is not mandatory that every student should have the contact number, or every student can have the email. So we can left blank. Okay, we can left blank, or you can simply we can left blank. Right, so such cases we can give the unique. So here, instead of giving the age, okay, here itself I will give contact as an integer followed by the constraint unique, and the default, that is a primary key of SID. So automatically the contact number will be unique. That means if you give the same contact number for two students, it will not be accepted because it doesn't accept the duplicates. It doesn't accept the duplicates. But you can left blank here. Okay, that's the main difference between the unique key and the primary key. So primary key doesn't accept the null values. Unique key can accept the null values, but it doesn't support the duplicates. Similarly, primary key is also doesn't support the duplicates. So that is a unique constraint. So for this also we'll execute the query. And coming to the foreign key, we have discussed about this foreign key. The mainly foreign key is used to relate two different tables. Okay, relate two different tables. For example, so I am having a two tables, student with SID, yes name, and course ID, and there is a one more table called course, so which is of CID, course ID, and course name. And you know that course ID is a primary key, yes ID is a primary key. Okay, and course ID in the student will be the foreign key. So this is a primary key, this is a primary key, and the primary key of one table will be the foreign key of another table. So this will relate the two tables. This will relate the two tables. So for this one, let us create a table course CID integer, C name, varchar of 30, and primary key of CID. So there will be some space. Primary key, there is some space. So right, primary key, and this will create a course ID. And then while creating while creating the student ID, so create table student. So how many fields we have to create? 3 fields. So SID with the integer, yes name as a varchar of some 30, and then CID as an integer, primary key. What is the primary key for the student table? SID. So SID, and we have to give the foreign key. So here we have to write foreign key of CID, which references the primary key of course CID. So here you need to write references course of CID. So the course of CID, that means course ID will be the primary key of course table, which references the foreign key in this student table. So this is the syntax to create the foreign key while creating a table, right? So this is how we will create a foreign key for two different tables. And so I will execute the same thing in the SQL. So I will show you the queries, I will demonstrate each and every constraint. So how the primary key can be set as a constraint, and how the not null, check, default, unique, and the foreign key. I will execute each and every query in the SQL. So let's move on to the SQL prompt.
Hello friends. So just now we have seen the syntax for the common constraints which can be applied while creating a table in MySQL. Now let us see the implementation part of each and every constraint. So first let me open the command line MySQL. So I will give the password. So just clear the screen. Now let us enter into the database. So let us check the databases which are available in this MySQL. So we have created one database, that is a YouTube. So let us enter into that particular database. So use YouTube sorry, use YouTube. Now we are in the YouTube. Now let us check what are the tables available here. So we have created a student table with four fields like student ID, student name, branch, and percentage. So we have not given any type of constraints here. Okay, so we'll delete this table and we'll create one more table, the same student table with the same fields, but by giving the constraints. So let us write down the constraints first. Let me write down the constraint first. So the first one is a not null. So if you give this constraint for any attribute, so then null value will not be accepted. That means the user have to give the value for that particular attribute. So the user is not able to leave that attribute blank. And the next one is the primary key. Primary key means it will avoid the redundancy, so the duplicates will not be allowed, and by default it should not be kept as a null. Okay, by default it should not be kept as a null. And then check. So while giving the value, we can check some condition, and if that condition is true, then only the value will be accepted. So that we'll discuss by executing the query, right? So then default. So we can set some default value. So if the user doesn't give the value for that particular attribute, this particular default value will be taken. And then unique. So this is also similar to our primary key, but only one difference is it will avoid the redundancy, similar to our primary key, but what the difference is it can have the null. Okay, the value of this particular attribute which we are giving as a unique can accept the null value. So primary key, it doesn't accept the null value. And then foreign key. That means to relate one table with another table. Okay, so these are the common constraints we have seen just now. So now we'll create a table by following each and every constraint. So let us check with each and every constraint. Now, so first let us check with the primary key. Okay, so let us drop this one. So drop table student, so that the student table will be dropped. So now you can observe show tables. So it will return empty set because the complete student table has been removed from the YouTube database. Right now, let us create a table. Okay, so we know the syntax for creation: create table name and give the attributes. So give the attributes. The first one is a student ID, which will be of a number. Okay, then let us take an integer by default. Next, second parameter is name. Okay, student name, which is of a varchar of some 30 characters, it will accept. Next, branch, which is of a varchar, again it will accept some 20 characters. Percentage, which is of a float value, right? After that, we have to give the constraints. Now I will give the constraint primary key of, here we need to give the primary key, which we have to give the primary key. So I will give SID as a primary key. That implies if you give the same SID for the two student details, it will not be accepted. And if you left this SID while inserting the values, it will not be accepted, because the characteristics of the primary key is by default it should be not null, and also it should not be repeated. So just we are giving the primary key now. Okay, so query okay, 0 rows affected. That means we have created a table. Now you can see show tables. So there is a student table. You can observe describe student, which will give the structure of a student table. See, student ID integer, no, null is no. So that means null is, we can't left this SID because of a primary key. Okay, now we'll insert some values and we'll check. So insert into table name values, and here we need to give all the details. Okay, Otherwise, if you want to give some particular attributes, not all the 4, you have to mention the attribute names. So here I am giving all the values. So 101 and S name Sundeep and branch CSE and percentage 98. Right? See, one row affected. You can check with the student database. See, one row is there. Now insert into student values. Again I'll give 101. 101, some other name Saradhi, CSE 95. So we should get an error because here the SID is a primary key. It should not accept the redundancy, that means the duplicate values. Here the first row, the student ID is 101, and the second row we are just inserting the second row and we are giving the same 101 as a student ID. So if you execute duplicate entry 101 for key student dot primary, that means the primary key we have given SID as a primary key, so it should not accept the duplicate values for that particular attribute. Okay, it should have only the unique values. So while insertion itself we are getting an error otherwise. So let us insert into student and give the attribute names like SID, SName, branch values. So 102, some Saradhi, and the branch is some ECE. Execute. See, query okay, one row affected. So we have given only the 3 attributes. So in the previous class we have seen the syntax for the insert command. So there you can insert all the values or only a few attributes, values for a few attributes. If you want to give a values for a few attributes, that attributes name should be mentioned here. So here I have mentioned only 3 attributes and I am giving only the 3 values. So we have skipped the attribute percentage. So by default it will be null. Let us check. So select star from student. See, by default it will be null. Now again I'll execute the same thing, but here now I just want to skip the SID. Okay, so I just want to skip the SID, SName, branch, and I'll give the percentage. So I'll so first I'll give the branch name, branch, and percentage. Let it be 99. Execute. See, field SID doesn't have a default value. It doesn't have the default value. You can observe here. So no null. So it should not be kept null. Okay, it should not be kept null because SID is declared as a primary key. So primary key characteristics are: one is redundancy, it should not accept the duplicate value. Second one is it should not be kept null. So for every row there should be SID. Okay, not null. Right? So hope you understood the constraint primary key. I'll change the order here. Right, primary key. So except the primary key, we can give a null for all the things. See, once again, insert. I will tell you. So I'll just insert the SID. Okay, I'm not giving any value for all the remaining attributes. So 103. Execute. You can observe query okay, one row affected, and you can see select the star from student so that the third one is 103 and all the remaining values kept null because we didn't give any constraint for these particular attributes. See, SID integer, varchar, percentage, and primary key. We have not given any constraint as in not null. So it will accept a null value. Right? So this is the primary key. Now let us drop the table and we'll check with the not a null. Okay, not null. So drop table student. So actually we need not drop the table. We can use the alter command to give the constraints, but there will be a little bit confusion. So I'll first let me explain you about all the constraints, and then we'll see the alter commands. Okay, so we can add the constraints by using the alter. So that we'll discuss in the next one, right? For better understanding, I'm just I'm deleting the table, and I'm creating a table with a multiple constraints. So drop to table student, so it was dropped. Now you can observe show tables, so there will be no tables, empty set. Now again we'll create a table, create table student. So first one SID, which is of a integer, SName, which is of a varchar of a 30 maximum, and branch, okay, branch, and varchar of a 20, percentage, which is of a float, and I just want to give the percentage. I don't want to keep a null value for this percentage, so give the constraint here itself, so not null. That implies this percentage value should be given by the user, so it should not be make blank while inserting the values. So I'll give the primary key will be the SID, right? So you can observe, so we are creating the table student with a SID integer, SName varchar, branch varchar, percentage float, and we are giving a primary key as SID, so it will be not kept blank. And percentage, I am giving a one more constraint, not null, for the attribute percentage. So the user have to give the percentage. Okay, have to give the percentage. The user is not able to left blank for this percentage while inserting the values. So we'll check. So now you can observe query okay, 0 rows affected. So if you apply the show tables, it will display the student. You can see describe student. See, float, null value, no null. It should not keep blank. Okay, and we can leave the SName and a branch, but we should not leave the SID and percentage. Let us check. So insert into student, okay, values. Let us take 1001 Sundeep, CSE, and 98. So query okay. Okay, now select star from student. You can get a complete details. Now let us check. Insert into student, give the names SID, SName, values 102, and SName Saradhi. So it will not be accepted because the field percentage doesn't have a default value. So you can observe here. So we are giving a constraint not null for a percentage. That implies the user have to give a value. It should not be kept blank. For example, if you modify the same query, so we are giving only the SID as well as percentage. So it will be accepted because the remaining two, that means the name and a branch, we are not giving any constraint, so it can be left blank. So 97, see, query okay. Select star from student. You can see a null will be given for SName and branch because we are not giving any constraint for SName and branch. We are giving constraint for percentage as a not null and primary key as a SID. So these two fields should not be kept blank. We have to pass the value. We have to give the value for these two fields because of the constraints, right? So hope you understood this. Not null, not null. And the next one, check. So before inserting the value, we can check the value, and if the condition is okay, then we can add the value. So let us check. Drop a table student. I'm just deleting the table. You can see show tables. There were no tables, empty set. So I'll create a table student with the different attributes, SID with a integer, SName with a varchar of a 30, branch as a varchar of 20, age integer, okay, percentage, or leave the percentage, let us stop here. So primary key of SID, then check age greater than 18, check age greater than 18. And so if you are passing the value for age, if the age is less than 17, the row will not be, the value will not be accepted. That means the row will not be inserted. So let us check. Create a table student, SID, integer, sname, varchar of 20 characters, branch of varchar of 30 characters, age of integer, primary key of SID, check age greater than 18, right? So now we have given this particular check constraint. So while inserting the data into this particular student details, if the age is less than 18, if the user gives the value of age as less than 18, the data will not be get inserted into the table. Let us check. See, describe student. So it will give the complete structure of the student. Now let us check. Insert into student values. So 101 Sundeep. What's the next one? Branch. So CSC. What's the age? So let it be 20. So one row if affected. So let us check the details. Select star from student. So we'll get the details. Now we'll try to insert the data. Okay. So whose age is less than 18? So 102. So let us take some Saradhi and ECE, and I'll give some 16. You can check. So the data will not be get inserted into the table because we have given this check constraint and we are checking whether age is greater than 18 or not. So if the condition is false, automatically the data will not be get inserted. So you can observe here we are giving the age as 16. So we got an error, check constraint student check is violated. So if you update this value as 19, it will be accepted. So you can select, you can see select star from student, you'll get the details. So like that we can also give the constraint check. We can give the constraint check. Okay, so we have to give the some condition. Based upon that condition, if the condition is true, then only the value will be inserted into the table. There is a check constraint. Now default constraint. So I will drop the table once again. Drop table student. So system CLS. So here the default constraint means we need not pass, if the user doesn't give the value to the attribute, the default value will be taken as a consideration. So we can set the default value. Okay, we can set the default value for any attribute. So let us create a table now. So now we'll create the table by giving the default constraint. So create table student and take the SID as an integer and sname as a varchar of 30 and branch with a varchar of 20, and let us take one more field, that is a college, which is also a varchar of 20, and let us set the default. So default, give the college name. I'll give the college name as a BEC. So if the value is not given by the user to the college field, so by default the college will be the BEC. So let us set the primary key as SID. You can check the query is okay. So 0 rows affected. So let us check, show tables. So student, so describe student. So it will give the structure of a student. See, the default value is a BEC. Okay, now let us insert the data. So insert into student values. So here we need to pass all the values here. Okay, you are not specifying the attribute, so we need to pass the values for all the fields. So let us take 101 Sundeep, CSC, and college some GEC. So one row is affected. Okay, one row is affected. That means we have to pass the value here. And if, see, select star from student, one row is inserted. Now let us take insert into student. Right here, if you want to pass SID, SNAME, and branch, I'm not giving any value for the college. Okay, any value for the college. So values, so 102 SNAME Saradhi and branch EC. So we are not passing any value for the college. So still it was executed. So previously, if you give this one, the default value for the college will be null. But here, while creating a table, we are giving a constraint for the college attribute that is a default BEC. That means if any value is not passed here, so automatically the default value for the college will be filled with BEC. You can observe here. See, we have not given any college name for 102, roll number 102, but the college name is BEC. Okay, so if you are not mentioning here, if you are not using any attributes here, you are supposed to pass the values. See, for example, let us take here insert into student. So I am not giving any value here. I am passing only the 3 parameters. So I'll give some Ramu and 103. So it will give an error because the column count doesn't match value at count at row 1. So because 4 attributes are there, here we are giving only the 3 attribute values. So we have to pass the attribute, value for the attribute college also, even though it was given a default BEC. So here we can skip that one. So if you want to give only the values for a few attributes, then you have to follow this syntax itself. So automatically the default value given for this particular attribute will be set as a BEC. So you should not use this one, okay, for the default. So if you are using this one, you are supposed to give all values for all the attributes, even though there is a default value, right? So hope you understood this one. So this is all about our default. And then the unique. Unique is similar to our primary key, but it can be accepted a null value. It can be accepted a null value. So let us check. So let us drop the student detail. So drop table student. So yes, system CLS. So show tables. You can observe the empty set. So create table student. So with SID integer, SNAME varchar of 30 and some percentage, right? Let us take some roll number. Okay, roll number of integer, which is of a unique. Let us give the constraint unique. So roll number will also be unique, but or else we can give the contact number. Why don't we give the contact, which is of a integer? Let us take the integer itself and give the unique. So it's not a mandatory that every student will be having a contact number, right? So unique, and let us check primary key with a SID, execute. So query okay, 0 rows affected. So you can use show tables to check the details. So DESC student, so which is a student. Okay, you can see unique key is a primary and this is a unique key. Now let us try to insert the values. Insert into student. student. Let us take all the values, student values. So 101, so Sundeep, and the third one is a contact number. Yes, the contact number will be some 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So query OK. So you can check, select star from student. So we got this one, contact. Yes. So let us check one more time. So insert into a student values, and if you are not able to give only the yes name, if you just want to give the s name, so if you don't want to give the s name, I mean sid and the contact number, definitely we'll get an error, because sid is a primary key. It should be not null. It should be not null. So let us take here sid and s name, or let us check with the multiple values. So 102, and let us take this one Saradhi, and what is the contact number which we have given? 1 2 3 4 5 6 and 7. See, so it will also be not accepted, because the contact number is a duplicate value. That means there is a one more contact number here. Okay, so here the contact is a unique, the contact attribute is a unique, so it should also not accept the duplicate values. So that's why it was not accepted. And one more thing, rather than that, it can accept the null value. It can accept the null value. Student sid, yes name, so which gives the 102 and Saradhi. So one row affected, so you can see, so select a star from student, so it can be null. So that's the only difference between the primary key and a unique key. A primary key and a unique key. Okay, so that means a primary key and unique key both are equal, so it doesn't accept the duplicate values, but apart from the primary key, unique key will accept the null value. That's the only difference. Okay, so this is a syntax how we can give the unique constraint for any attribute, right? So hope you understood this one, right? The next one, a foreign key. So now foreign key, we know that the foreign key means the primary key of one table will be the foreign key of another table. Let us take the two tables. So I will show you the syntax how we can give the foreign key. Okay, with the help of a foreign key itself, we are going to relate the tables, right? So let us create this one. So student table, will create the student table with SID, yes name, branch, and course ID, and also course table with course ID and course name and duration, right? So you can observe here, course ID is a primary key in course table, which is a foreign key in a student table, which is a foreign key in student table. So let us create that one. Let us create this one. So create, so let us clear the screen, system CLS, create table. Let us create the course table first. Course CID of integer and CNAME of varchar of 30, right? Only two attributes. We are giving only two attributes, and let us give the primary constraint, primary key, as CID. So query OK. You can check show tables. So we are having a course table and a student table. Okay, so let us drop here the student table, and let us create one more student table. Now let us check show tables will give only the course table. Now we'll create a student table with a course ID as a foreign key. So create table student. Okay, what are the fields? Student ID, student name, branch, and CID. Student SID with the integer, S name with the varchar of 30 characters, branch with a varchar of 20 characters, and CID with a integer, right? So also we have to give the primary key. So primary key is of SID, and again we need to give the foreign key. What's the foreign key? Foreign key of the foreign key. Which is a foreign key here? CID is a foreign key which references the course of CID. So the foreign key is a CID in this table which references to the primary key CID of course table, right? So this is the syntax. Oh, sorry. References. Okay. Yes, is we have to give the references, not a reference, right? Sorry. So let us create a table student SID integer, sname varchar of 30, branch varchar of 20, CID of integer, primary key of SID, foreign key of CID, references. So here we have not given yes. Okay, so references CID of course, that means which is of a primary key. So you can see query okay, 0 rows affected. Now you can see show tables. So two tables, course and student. So you can observe describe student. You can see primary key and mul. Mul means nothing but is a foreign key. Okay, it's a foreign key, right? So describe course. So here also we'll get the structure which is a primary key, right? So this is how we can create a foreign key. Okay, so once again I'm explaining. So this is the only creation of a foreign key and a primary key constraints. I'm not inserting any values. So we'll discuss about the foreign key while executing the queries relating with the different tables. Okay, so but this is a syntax how we can give the foreign key for any uh, table. Okay, any attribute, for any attribute, right? So hope you understood this constraints. So this is all about our constraints: a primary key, not null, check, default, unique, and foreign key. So let's stop here. Hope you understood this session. So if you are having any doubts regarding this one, feel free to post your doubts in the comment section. Definitely I will try to clarify all your doubts. And if you really enjoyed my session, like my session, share my session with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much.